Hello everyone, welcome to Turn 1 Talk, a weekly podcast in which we are going to cover everything Formula 1, news, updates and happenings and rumours. I'm joined today by Charlie and Paddy, otherwise known as CJ. Sorry, Charlie. If you want to introduce yourselves, Charlie first.
Hello, I'm Charlie, known as CJ.
Hello, I'm Paddy and I have a cup of coffee now, so...
Fair enough. I nearly dropped my mic. So, the Netherlands Grand Prix, Zandvoort. How do we find it? Quite a lackluster race, in my opinion, but I'd want to fire it over to CJ first.
If it was last year and we were talking about if it was Verstappen, it would have been horrific because it's a different car, 20 seconds, everyone's happy about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. There were some good moments. The 5 cars in turn 1. Some interesting tyre strategies. Different teams doing different things. There's a lot of teams doing medium hard. But hey ho, it was decent. It was interesting. And it was what it was. 20 seconds is a big gap though for anyone committed that. That's quite interesting. Yeah. So that's my big takeaway. It's quite worrying.
Yeah. And Paddy, what did you think of the race?
Yeah, it's a strange one to call. Like the impression McLaren made, 22 seconds of a gap. Now I know they said they upgraded the car during the summer break, and that's a lot of upgrades to be that dominant. Be interesting now to see Monza, Azerbaijan, very high speed circuits. McLaren hasn't gone good there in the last 3 years, so be interesting to see now whether it is McLaren dominance throughout the rest of the season or Red Bull, Mercedes come back into the fight.
Yeah.
So the race itself, give or take, kind of, as CJ said there, if it was Verstappen who came and done 20 seconds, it would have been, one of them other races.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that great. Bit of fighting down in the lower ranks, but it wasn't the worst. About maybe a 3 out of 10.
A 3 out of 10, but wasn't the worst. Yeah. Wow. Okay, we've got some harsh scoring going on. If I were going to rate it, I'd rate it about a 6, just because there was another winner other than Verstappen, so that obviously spices up the championship a bit, if anything, especially on the constructors' side. But overall, it just seemed like even you said before we got on the call a couple of days ago that, well, during the qualifying, that the presenters didn't even seem like they wanted to be there.
It seemed like throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
Like, now the race did have the atmosphere and the Dutch fans and everything.
Yeah.
But qualifying, oh my God.
I thought it
happened.
Quite commendable that they all cheered Norris, even though the hometown hero didn't win.
That's very good. They love showing that.
Could you imagine if Hamilton won?
No. Couldn't imagine that.
Anyway, let's discuss the start. Norris with another poor start. His performances off the line seem to be a bit shaky at best. I mean, Piastri also didn't start well, but CJ, your thoughts on that?
Well, if we're being told by the media, as they say, that it's a double, the championship fight is on for both the drivers and the constructors. Well, the starts aren't world championship caliber at the minute. You could say that he's got world championship attributes. I believe he does. He's obviously capable of fighting for race wins consistently, but the starts consistently now aren't good enough. Today, there's multiple instances of different cars having difficult starts. I get that. But again, it's not world championship caliber at this moment, and that is one of the key points about if you're ahead into turn 1, you can dictate the race. I mean, if he was ahead into turn 1 today, the gap would have been 30 seconds. I mean, it is that simple.
Very true.
It would have been massive, especially with no safety cars. We've had no safety cars in Spain now, 6 races of no safety cars, which is a long time. So, yeah, I don't know. I think his starts aren't good enough. I mean, today he was very lucky that Piastri had a bad start. So there's an argument to be made that maybe it was with the McLaren, maybe they got something wrong from the pit wall. Fair enough. I can understand that. Overall this season, if he's going to fight till the end, the main point now needs to be nailing the starts. We'll get to the high-speed circuits, as Paddy said. It's going to be different. The nature of the circuits is going to be different. But those circuits have longer runs into turn 1. If that was another racetrack like Azerbaijan, as man's maybe not, but if it was Monza, he would have lost more than one position off that start, and it's harder to come back through the pack. Yeah. So he needs to be careful now, especially next weekend. He needs to make sure that that's nailed.
Yeah. And Paddy, what do you think of Norris's start?
That's true, and you wonder if it is a fundamental issue with the McLaren. Like both McLarens today now, as you've seen, it cost Piastri massively. That should have been a McLaren 1-2. Now you could go into the strategy of what they done with Piastri and everything, but then again, the start wasn't done right, and the start kind of dictated his race from then on. He's even said it in post-race press conference. Like, is it an issue with the McLaren? Are the team setting up the car wrong? Is it the drivers? Like, there's so many little things. Just to gain a millimeter on someone on the start, like,
yeah,
Norris, there has to be some sort of an issue there. Is it 5 or 6 times now? You can take out Sochi because, whoever started on third in Sochi or anything would normally get into the lead by turn 1. But
very
really
true.
No excuse for a track like Zandvoort. Not a long straight until turn 1 or anything, and McLaren still ends up second.
Yeah, and I believe Jolyon Palmer was it that pointed it out in qualifying yesterday. The short run down to turn 1 might help him today, but it just didn't. Anyone else that stood out for you on the start, CJ?
Started by Leclerc.
Performance-wise?
Leclerc's start was good, very good. Piastri seemed to go out a little bit too far into turn 1, a little bit too far wide when he was trying to fight Russell and get the place back. Whereas Leclerc seemed to get it just nailed perfectly, where it wasn't too far out to lose that much time. Still managed to get past Perez. That was good. There wasn't too much really else that I saw off the start. I think Gasly got Alonso off the start. That was important. Yeah. I think he got him off the line. Yeah. At the minute, especially with the fact we've got 4 cars fighting for race wins different weekends, you could say the Ferrari's not one of them, but it has won races this season with both drivers. You can say that now at this point it becomes a question of who's going to come 9th, who's going to come 10th if all the cars finish. So it's not and normally that'll be the Aston. So the most impressive drivers, I think, are the people that managed to creep into the points that aren't those drivers. So yeah, I think it was decent in that regard. But I think Carlos Sainz did very well in the end, didn't he? Came through from 11th to get to 5th.
Both Ferrari drivers did incredibly well. I feel like, for me personally, I think that Leclerc is now out driving what's given to him. However, I think Carlos Sainz is doing incredibly well as well, and is as always consistent. It just seems like Leclerc has that slight overall pace edge, and once he's got it dialed in and not making mistakes, he just seems to be the faster driver. However, I will say that the caveat there is that Sainz started down in 10th, so maybe he had more today. Paddy, any standouts for you on the start, especially off the line?
I'd say Leclerc as well. Like, a great race from him. After all, that Ferrari definitely did not look like it should have been on third today, and he was keeping up with the leaders up until the very end there. Like, great management throughout his whole race, everything like that. Other than that, from the start, no one really kind of caught out. You'd nearly give it to Logan Sargent for not, something.
Yeah, sure. Wow. Poor Logan Sargent.
Want to go into later, but
yeah, we'll come back to Logan Sargent later. We'll stick to drivers off the line. I mean, we've kind of covered Leclerc, we've covered Sainz, both Ferraris. Verstappen obviously got an incredible start. I don't feel like we've mentioned that.
Yeah.
And for Norris's extremely poor start, I think it was highlighted by Verstappen's incredible start. I don't think it was as bad as it looked. If we look at the pack behind at the start of the race, they all kind of looked a bit pedestrian compared to Verstappen coming through off the line. So yeah, for me, like, Verstappen's start was like pretty impressive as well. However, Perez is again off the line, losing places as he did in Belgium. What do we think of that? Do we think that Perez is doing enough to keep the continued support of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko? CJ?
See, is it a question of is Perez doing enough, or is it that there is no one else to put in? So I'd say, like, from my perspective of it, is a case of they have the data from the Red Bull drivers. They obviously have Lawson from last year. They have Ricciardo from this year. They have Tsunoda from this year. Now, if they can look at the data and look at it from that point of view, as Christian Horner said to Sky, and it is a response he's obviously going to give and support his driver, are you going to turn around and go, you've got Perez, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, and is there any guarantee that Ricciardo goes into that seat now and decides that and that's going to make the difference? Is he going to be ahead of Leclerc? Is he going to be ahead of those drivers? I mean, today is a weekend where, you know, he's come behind Sainz, which is a negative, but he's still finished ahead of both Mercedes cars and maybe they lacked pace in the race. I don't think it's a question, is he doing enough? Is there a solution to put in? And I don't think personally at this time, like we can say Ricciardo, he had a better race today than Tsunoda. And you guarantee by putting Ricciardo in that seat now, after the summer break's already happened, can we guarantee that Ricciardo is the one that's going to make the difference in winning the Constructors' Championship? Probably not. They're probably going to lose it with anyone they put in. Lawson, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, whoever they put in that seat now, they will lose the championship if it stays the way it is. The car isn't the fastest. If Verstappen wins all the races to the end of the year, more than likely, the McLarens will pick up enough points now to catch them. And it doesn't look like Verstappen is going to win the rest of the races. Win the rest of the races. So I'd say no. It's probably not worth changing. Just admit defeat.
And Paddy, your thoughts? Do you echo the same opinions? Do you feel a bit more?
I think he gets brutalised because Red Bull in recent years, between Gasly, Albon, has just stripped them out of a seat there in the slightest bit of performance. If you think back to now, this race, Verstappen has come second and Perez in sixth. Think when Mercedes were dominating, and that was what Gasly, give or take, was given. Albon was getting around 6th to 5th to 7th, and he got stripped out of that seat within, well, he did get a season and a half. Sergio has got a lot more time than that. The Red Bull's nearly kind of back where it was in that second place before they were fighting for championships. And between Christian Horner and everything, defending, like going on the offensive if anyone brings it up, considering how brutal they were in recent years. And they are still leading the Constructors' Championship, but they're leading it by, I think, 30 points now.
Something like that, isn't it? It's 30. Let me see if I can find it before we mention it. CJ, any further thoughts?
I agree, but I also think it's a different time in F1. So, like when Gasly was getting 6th or 7th, or when in 2019 when Albon came in, the field was a lot further. And 2020, okay, so you had the emergence of the Force Indies that weren't Force Indies anymore, the Racing Points. They came in and they took up spots in there to compete and take points off the Red Bull drivers. But Ferrari also dropped out of that, so nothing really changed.
Yeah.
In terms of absolute pecking order, I think that at that point, if Gasly was against these drivers now, with how close the field is, I mean, it's undeniable. The field now is so much closer. It's like this, whereas before, in the previous race, it was like that. There was only 2 cars at the end of the regulation change. If you put those drivers in now, can you say that they would be in the top 10? Would they not? Is it not possible that today that Albon in that seat, if it was him in that car now, in that exact same scenario, would he not have been behind both Mercedes drivers? It's a possibility. We don't know.
It's a very fair point. It is a very fair point.
We don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying the fact that we don't know says it all. We have no idea, and from what we saw, you could argue probably not. Albon got unlucky at times. Podiums, race wins taken off him from certain instance. Okay, fair enough. But he also did get lucky with the podiums that he did get that season in Mugello. So
yeah,
I'm not really buying too much into it. Albon's a great driver, and I think he's flourished now. I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking if you were to put those drivers in now, you probably wouldn't have a better way of it.
Yeah, fair enough. And what do we think of the actual overall race as a whole in terms of? It seemed like the leading two, to me, got away from everyone else, and then everyone else behind, maybe from about 6th onwards. There was a couple of gaps here and there, 3rd, 4th, 5th. But 6th onwards, it seemed to be kind of like a DRS train for the most of the race. Is that what everyone saw? Did anyone see that? Paddy?
Yeah, you could see, I think it was Magnussen just on the back straight there, getting overtaken by 4 cars going into it.
Yeah.
Like, there was very good racing down below. Even there, when you had Piastri coming up again, Russell, like I was thinking at that time, he's after passing Russell there so quickly. And then he gets to the back of Leclerc and just gets stuck. You can still see with that McLaren, with all the upgrades, still doesn't have the straight line speed. It's really lacking in that throughout each event. Even where they put up the track dominance in qualifying, and you could see along the back straight and everything, Max Verstappen was quicker than Norris or anything, but it was into all the corners. It's a more downforce, whatever way they've laid out that car. I'm really interested in seeing it in Monza now next. Will they be third, fourth? Like, I really think Stella did say they have something for Monza, a different package altogether, which normally teams do bring. But will they have the speed? I think Red Bull, Ferrari. I'm not sure Mercedes when it comes to Monza either. They've been lacking in straight line speed as well of recent times. Be very interesting to see.
Any thoughts on that, CJ?
I don't get Mercedes. I can't understand it. I don't know what's. It seems like they come out and they found the issue for the past few years. Sometimes at some tracks they dialed it in. It was there, and we thought, okay, even if it's not dialed in perfectly for race wins, it's going to be. I wasn't one of the opinion that it was going to bring them right to the front every race, but I thought a driver would be on the podium. You know, we had 3 different constructors on the podium today. I thought they'd be one of them.
Yeah.
But this weekend is a bad one. It's a really, really bad one. To be where they are, it's not ideal at all. That wasn't good.
Aston Martin seemed to have fallen off a little bit. Stroll and Alonso 7th and 8th, but the opposite way around. Alonso 7th. They fell back quite a bit. Alonso obviously picking up a crucial point for them at this point. After the summer break, were we expecting them to move forward? Were we expecting... It doesn't look like they're going anywhere. Does that team kind of look like a standout to you that's waiting on something in the years to come and is very much focused on 2026 maybe? But is that not too early?
It's too early. I mean, they're not allowed to develop the car until when? Start the engines, obviously. They're getting their engines from Honda.
True, yeah. Okay.
They're allowed to develop the car until the start of 25. It's a certain date. The Aston Martin one's interesting. Obviously, they got those developments wrong in 23. They had no direction, and if you've got no direction, like it, and the upgrades aren't working, you're scared to put upgrades on the car. You don't really know what you're going to do. So maybe they're trying to figure out if their upgrades work. The upgrades for Belgium, where, if I remember correctly, they were just meant to be to see if they actually worked, how they were meant to work. The issue is that they were fighting with Gasly for a while, and that Alpine at the start of the year was awful. Yeah. So if he's floating around fighting you, you've other teams are picking up their development. Again, 26, I imagine they'll be somewhere fighting for podiums. I think it'll be like 23. I just think at this precise minute, they probably are just ticking over, waiting to see what happens. We all think Adrian Newey's going to that place. We'll be interested to see what happens with that. If that's the way that it goes, they might just sacrifice the rest of the year and go, okay, well, we'll have a good push for 25 and then 26 go again and be out there front of the field.
What are your thoughts?
Seems CJ is definitely right about that. Like, it does seem that a lot of teams have kind of fell off the way. Something got to do with that correlation with the data and wind tunnels they're getting, and simulations. It's just like you can see Ferrari have got into that this year. Aston Martin, you would have thought going into the season they knew what the regulations were about, especially from last season. Like, they came into it from, I think they finished 8th in 22, and to come in and just come out in Bahrain, score podiums with Alonso, like, something with these cars, with whatever it's the simulation, you can see McLaren are completely on top of it now, but Red Bull have also lost the way of it, and they've been there throughout the last few years. I think, now, I heard this, whether it's true or if it isn't, that Verstappen was actually using the Bahrain spec floor on that Red Bull.
Yeah, that was a rumour that was circulating.
So whether it switched to that just tells you, like, that Hungary upgrade that they were supposed to be running on that car was supposed to be 4 or 5 tenths, was rumoured. It just really hasn't been there. Like, the whole car, it's like it's changed into a completely different car ever since China. If you can imagine China and then see now that Mercedes have won a race, a McLaren being 22 seconds ahead of a Red Bull.
Yeah.
It's like a different car, isn't it?
Completely different. Whether it's correlation or things being found in rules.
So, Paddy, before you mentioned how at least 4 drivers went ahead of Kevin Magnussen on the start-finish straight going into turn 1. This Haas has been struggling over the weekend with its brakes after the technical directive that amended the rule set to what was the wording again? Stop. No team should. CJ, could you help me with that one?
There's some fancy talking. There's some fancy talking there.
Fancy talk, but basically, you're not allowed to alternate the brake pressures applied between brakes. The symmetry has to be aligned.
Was it about the forces on the brakes or something has to align to? Yeah, it's some fancy jargon. The top bottom of it is someone's been done for a reason. There is a team that they don't agree are abiding by the rules. A team. A lot of things have been pointed, and then we roll up this weekend. And it's on the team.
Haas.
Struggling.
No, I thought it would be another team. But to speak about Haas, for me anyway, like, just to point out a driver that seems to be quite adaptable. We saw Kevin Magnussen struggling on the straights, in the braking zone. Sorry. However, Nico Hülkenberg finished just on the fringes of the points.
11th, I think. Yeah,
we can probably get that information.
11th, yeah.
Yeah, just on the fringe of the points compared to Kevin Magnussen. What do we think about Haas struggling with their brakes, and what do we think about the performance disparity between the two teammates? Do we think that they could correlate?
Haas all year. If Haas have been doing it all year and they've had to do it to get the points they've got after the past few seasons, fair play to them. Crack on. If they've been found out now and they're still getting near 11th and in 11th near the points, again, with no safety cars, nothing to cause a little bit of spice to get them in there and get a result, fair play. I think most people would agree Magnussen probably won't be on the grid next season. These new generation of cars. Against Schumacher, he looked sensational.
Yeah.
Obviously, Hülkenberg came in, and you can see that he probably isn't meeting the mark anymore, and that's a shame. Magnussen is a great driver when the car is right for him. Evidently, this Haas, the way it's going, it's not his car. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's too much of a mark against Magnussen. Probably just how good Hülkenberg's been the past 2 seasons, to be fair.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
It is Hülkenberg putting the line. Like, you've seen him there during COVID when he had to step in, go into the racing point as it was at the time. That guy just seems, throw him into the car and he'll deliver. He's really kind of just destroyed. Oh my God. I know, said Marcus Ericsson.
Don't worry about it. Destroyed.
Magnussen.
His name, Magnussen, thank you. Nearly destroyed Magnussen this year. Like, he's driving the wheels off that Haas. Whether it is supposed to be 11th on pace, very good out of the whole team, considering like their staff compared to, if you think about it, Aston Martin, he finished ahead of Stroll. Williams then, but Williams is still in the building phase. They really got done by Albon qualifying 8. You'd wonder what he could have done. Now, I know the floor was out of regulatory correction there on
by point something of a mil, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Then they had to shave off, which I find quite incredible that the car was still somewhat within. Like it must have maintained its pace if it's that marginal, surely.
Yeah.
Should have. But then again, as you've seen with Russell, with the weight just being off by the slightest bit, disqualified as well. And that was from a
maybe we can come back to George Russell's controversial, in my opinion, disqualification that everyone seems to be overlooking. Going back to the braking directive, I'll call it the braking rule change or patch. One team we thought would be the culprit, or many thought would be the culprit, especially in one certain fan base, was Red Bull. Now, clearly, if they have been exploiting or finding loopholes within the rules, so it was within the rules if they've not been penalised for it, then it's obviously not affected their pace whatsoever. Or has it? CJ?
Don't know. Don't know.
Don't know.
We've got no idea. We don't know how much of it was the McLaren. I mean, what's scary is he did the fastest lap on the last lap. I mean, he said in the cool-down room after is 100% battery usage.
Yeah.
But even then, we still have no idea of how if he pushed harder, what he could have got out of that car. I mean, it's worrying. As I said at the start, if he got ahead at the start, he would have been 30 seconds clear. So we don't know where Red Bull's pace is. I don't think anyone can truly turn around and say it's down to this, down to that. The fact that Perez is still sixth in the end. I mean, there was races where he's not even been challenging for that. So I don't know if it's a pace. You'd think you'd see it more in Perez than you would in Verstappen if it was a pace thing like that that's knackered. And that's my only sort of thing where I just don't think they've taken a step forward. I don't think they've been forced back. It's an odd one. We'll see, I think, more at Monza. If they're within 10 seconds of the winner at Monza, if they win at Monza, then we'll see there, really.
And not to stick on the point, but would you say, like, if it was still a possibility, would it have been retired before the rule change came into effect?
If it was Red Bull that were doing it?
If it was Red Bull that were doing it, do you think they would have retired it before it came into effect? Which would lend into the narrative that from China onwards.
Well, why would you?
To make sure that your car would actually work for the rest of the season, in my opinion.
Okay, I get that point of view. That's
if it was Haas, for example,
so long.
If it was Haas, for example,
yeah,
and then they've immediately retired it, and then we can see the results of that. Surely a team like Red Bull would preempt something like that.
You'd think so, but also, if you're going to do it preemptively and it gets changed, surely do it for longer than just after China onward. You do it for longer. True. I mean, especially the fact that they were, as Christian Horner said, they were within a lap winning at Silverstone. Hungary was interesting. Spa, he qualified on pole and by chunk. It was an engine penalty that pushed him back.
Yeah.
So it's not as bad as it's been made out. What is bad now is how far the McLaren are ahead this race. And we don't know whether that's the difference or not. Whereas the Haas has actually shown evidence of struggling with the brakes. Yeah. Like Magnussen today at turn 1, that was, And over the weekend, Hulkenberg had issues. In the race, he did a great job. But over the weekend, you could see that both drivers had to do some adapting. So I don't think you'd see evidence, I think, with Perez if there was a big issue. And I don't think we've seen much to say that that's the case.
Paddy?
I would like to say there, got to do with the evidence with the brakes. We did see in Australia, if you think back to that far in the season, the right brake on Max Verstappen's car went up in fire. Whether
the right rear,
to do with it or not. Like one thing that I just like to say, for a car that was so good on tires, nursing them throughout a whole race, could nearly do the whole stint on a tire. How have they got so bad all of a sudden on tyre wear? Like, they used to be no bother at all, fly along, happy days. Now, whether it's just because they have to push the car more and it's not Max Verstappen out in front just cruising along, because then you can nurse your tyres. If you're cruising 22 seconds ahead, Norris was probably doing it today. But now that Max Verstappen has to push, maybe it's not so good on the tyres anymore. He's pushing nearly every lap. But you just kind of, from that race in China to come, kind of, it's either the teams have gained ground on Red Bull remarkably, and that Red Bull concept is at its absolute limit, and they can't really find anything got to do with it. And the rest of the teams have found different ideas, get past the limit or whatever. It's really amazing, especially like Mercedes winning 2 races this year. They did not look anywhere. Just to gain that much time on Red Bull from having such a good car at the start of the season to now where they're barely hanging on to the second best car all of a sudden. It's a slim margin.
Just to play devil's advocate to that and be in Red Bull's corner for a second.
You?
Yeah. Just to be in Red Bull's corner for a second, you could also argue, though, that Red Bull were significantly ahead of the pack, and if the pack has converged in, that pack was always very close together. It was Red Bull in the lead on its own, and then the rest for a very long time. Now, if the pack is closing in at a similar rate as they were at a similar pace together, if they have converged, then maybe that could be the reason why all of the top three, the other 3 teams in the top 4, have caught at the same time, because they were generally all together. It's not like all of a sudden they've caught them. They kind of, they've always been on some kind of plateau together. These teams in the development, and it was always Red Bull ahead. So you could say that as well.
And then again, we could just be seeing since the rule change got to do with where you finish in the championship and how much testing you get available, we could just be seeing that kind of pile in on Red Bull. All that time that they've lost from being first in the championship has now come back, and they just don't have enough time to develop research.
And they did also receive that penalty, didn't they? On top of that.
Yeah, at the very start of this rules with that penalty. It could just be coming back just throughout the years, all the field conversion in on top of them. So the car could be perfectly legal throughout the whole year. Like, you just don't know until you're in there.
Very true.
Really.
If we stick with Red Bull for just one more moment before moving on, as Christian Horner said on Saturday or yesterday, as the time of the recording anyway, who else would you put in the car other than Perez? Now, I'm not sticking on this and keeping on harping on about it because we've already hashed it out. However, it really does show that Verstappen is the difference maker, and the rest of the teams all have like 2 drivers that are consistently up there. And the fact that Red Bull doesn't have a consistent option to put in is quite indicative of how the driver program has gone. Who outside of Red Bull would you put in there that you think could be the difference maker? That's not an obvious choice, like, I don't know, George Russell or...
I had an idea when Paddy was speaking earlier on.
Okay.
And obviously it's not doable because the driver has a contract for next year.
Yeah.
But if they've got Hulkenberg in that seat, as we've said about getting performances out of the car, I mean, the only one you could say is it's all about perception in Formula One, as we know. That you see how Ricciardo's doing now, how he's perceived. But then Hulkenberg has proven in this generation of cars, even before in 2020 when he had to step in, he can go into a car and he can get results. Now, if you ask yourself, if they put Hulkenberg in at the end of 2020, after the performance he'd shown by stepping in, would that have been a more reliable option then? I mean, that's an argument that I can hear and go, okay, there's something in that. The only thing I would say is if everyone's going to say about how bad Ricciardo is or has been for these in the past few years, then, if you put him in the same car head to head, it was his team, Ricciardo did smash him. So there's an argument to be had, but obviously, as we know, realistically speaking, it's all about how the driver can drive that car and adapt. Now, do we think Ricciardo can adapt to that Red Bull? Probably to a point. But do we know that Hulkenberg has the ability to step into multiple different types of cars and has been proven to get results to a good standard, Hulkenberg would have been the one that I would have gone for if he was available. But obviously,
and Paddy,
unless they find a way,
your hypothetical pick.
Agree with Hulkenberg 100%, but they did have a driver without a contract and never signed him. Carlos Sainz, you've seen him in the McLaren, the Ferrari. He has adapted very well throughout, like his whole career. He's in the Renault, everything. And he's always been to a point where he's not, I wouldn't say he's a Charles Leclerc, a Max Verstappen, but he's a great driver. There's nothing wrong. For him to be going to Williams, it's a bit of a loss. A great gain for Williams, but with a team like Red Bull, Sergio not performing as he should really, to just kind of push Carlos Sainz aside, it's a bit of a strange one for this year. Like, they're not backing their own development or anything like that to put him in the car. Like, if they were going to put in someone, you would say maybe Yuki Tsunoda, because he did outperform Ricciardo to quite an extent. Whether I think he would be good in that team, I don't think so. He's very hot-headed, everything like that. But surely, with the way they used to go, it would be back in the youth. But now they just seem to be kind of, no, we're just staying with who we have, and that's it, no questions. So Carlos Sainz was a very good candidate for that seat, and I do think so. I hope it works out for him in Williams, and it's a great asset to have for Williams.
Yeah, I agree. We'll use Carlos Sainz as a segue away from Red Bull and on to Williams then. Throughout the weekend, obviously was it practice 3? Logan Sargent lost control of the car, out of turn 3, into the barrier, and then his car caught fire. It was obviously, we now know that his Williams seat is taken. However, there are rumours of him being replaced already before the end of the season. Do we think that that's a wise choice for Williams? And who do you think will go into that car, CJ?
It depends, doesn't it? It really depends. And it depends with the second part of that question as to who they put in. If they put Schumacher in that car, then no. If those are the rumours and that's what's going to happen, absolutely not. You're swapping like for like. And at least the driver knows the team. Absolutely no way would I swap him for Schumacher. If you were to talk about someone else who has previously been a test driver for teams like maybe Van Dorn, Drugovic, maybe even if Mercedes, obviously they're your engine supplier, obviously he's got to be on good terms with Toto Wolff, James Vowles, that is. Would you try and take Kimi Antonelli for the rest of the season? Try and use him. You could say, okay, we'll be a test dummy for him a little bit. Try and give him a bit of experience. See what he can do. He's more promising than Logan Sargent is at this point. He just is. There's counter arguments to that, I know, but this driver unfortunately hasn't got the ability to be scoring points. Obviously, the car is not really good enough most weekends too, but he's not challenging Albon, and unfortunately, he smashes cars. So it's. Yeah.
How eloquently put.
Yeah. No getting around it, is there?
Paddy, your thoughts on Williams?
For both sides, if he goes. Like, Logan Sargent looks like a very nice chap. Everything. Probably, he's in the top 20 drivers in the world. He can't be that bad. He just cannot drive these F1 cars whatsoever. Like, he's basically really nowhere. Now, he has qualified Perez a few times, and
maybe just to stop your thought for a second there. I haven't done this yet, but he's in the top 20 drivers in the world. He can't be that bad.
Like, he can't be. I think it's better for both sides if he does go. He can get a bit of time to prepare if he's going to go to WEC or somewhere like that. The Williams can't afford for someone to be crashing a car. Like, fair enough, in a competitive session, you're pushing to the limit. In free practice 3, you really, in the free practice, I know drivers push and everything, but it really hurts the team crash a car like that. Yeah. Williams can't keep affording it. That was a car that had a whole rake of new upgrades on it.
We do need to be careful about saying that Williams can't afford stuff. They maybe can't afford it for their budget to get back to the front for the rest of the development
cycle. But, it's not.
And the budget cap, but they have money. Like, this isn't the Williams of old. Like, Williams can afford these things. The thing with Australia not having a chassis, it sort of shows operationally they're not up to where they need to be, and that will only come in time. But they have money now. They have backing. The money isn't the problem. It's about budget cap and the money allocated to upgrades and that. You'd argue that has probably taken a significant amount of money, like what's happened over the year. So it's not I don't think it's so much the actual amount of money that they have. It's about the money they can't use because it's being allocated to other places by, let's be fair, Sargent didn't smash that car at Australia. You just need to say it like it is. It's not. Yeah. It's not great, is it?
No, it's not. To be fair, it was Alex Albon that smashed that car at Australia and then proceeded to take Logan's car. Now the decision was made that it was better suited in Alex's hands, but as a driver, that's got to hurt. However, qualifying head to head speaks for itself, and yeah. I personally think they won't put anyone in the car for till the end of the season. I think they will continue with him, despite the rumours. I'd be very surprised if they did, just because the options, as CJ pointed out, are limited to what seems to be people that are used to being at the back of the grid in a Formula One car, if anything, or Kimi Antonelli, who has never properly been in a Formula One car.
Until Monza. When he jumps in for free practice. Now, if that's interesting, then it might be a different story. They might snap him up straight away. You never know.
Yeah, it's very true that things can turn on a dime in Formula One. Back to the race. We'll just go over, because of how dominant that McLaren were, or at least Lando Norris were in that race, and we spoke about Monza. The straight line speed of that car, I feel, is interesting. Do we think that it is as significant as the Red Bull of old that we saw in 22 and 23? Or do we think it's just marginally ahead of Red Bull in terms of its straight line speed? For me, I saw through the second sector Verstappen catching Norris when Norris did eventually get ahead, and then obviously losing him on the straights. But I'd like to see your thoughts on it and see whether you think the entire field is really in terms of straight line speed, or at least the top four.
Oh, God. It's interesting because the thing is, McLaren, I haven't got the information in front of me about the top line speed. What was interesting to see, on fresher tyres, Piastri couldn't get past Leclerc. And you'd think that if you had that much more straight line speed on fresher tyres, it would be, with two DRS zones, admittedly they are small, and I get it. Yeah. You'd think you'd still be able to make an impact. He made no impact on Leclerc. I think it's going to be interesting to see at Monza. I haven't got an informed enough opinion. I think that maybe it might not be as clear cut as it was this weekend, but it might be, say, if a car gets ahead of that McLaren, then it's Ferrari, for example, in turn one. Can they get past that Ferrari? That's the thing. If it's against the Red Bull, it might be an easier job. I mean, he flew past Verstappen, really, even with a little jolt and a little look to the right. Didn't really put up much of a fight at his home race. There's nothing more he could do. Didn't use, I'm guessing, his first attack. So, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe behind the Ferrari comparatively to that, maybe not.
Paddy?
Very hard to guess. Still, I did say at the end of that race, now he is something for Monza. Whether the McLaren is going to be a bullet in a straight line, he has said that he's trying to make the car as good every single track as he could. I do think Red Bull still lead when it comes to straight line speed. I'd nearly give Ferrari second in that, McLaren third. I don't really know who you'd go for then for straight line speed. It's really interesting now because we haven't really got a fast-paced circuit. China technically counts longest straight in the calendar. I suppose you could give it that, but Azerbaijan, Monza, Azerbaijan to be so far back in the season now compared to all times, you'd kind of have a rough idea who'd be coming into Monza, who'd be quick, but no idea so far. I would say Red Bull. I'd be, if I was to put money on it, I would put Red Bull to win this race now up in Monza. Very interested to see McLaren. Ferrari should be good, but in recent times they haven't been that quick. I just don't know. I couldn't say.
Yeah, Ferrari did obviously win in Monaco, and where did Sainz win? Australia, which are shorter circuits and are not necessarily dominated by straight line speed, especially Monaco.
Really bad race in Canada as well. Really bad race in Canada.
Yeah.
And Austria, they weren't fighting. Not really.
So that could be indicative of their pace. Into Monza, unless they're bringing up grade 4 Monza as Ferrari usually do, to try and get some last ditch effort to try and win it. But we'll move away from the race now. I mean, we can say that Norris did an incredible job after the start to pull it back and then keep his head. Verstappen, I feel like, couldn't really do any more than get in second, and it was quite interesting to see him being able to be resigned to second. I think a lot of people dig at him for not being able to keep a cool head when he's losing the race, but I think it's more of the fact when he knows he should be winning the race, or feels he should be winning the race at least, that's when that emotion comes out. Whereas today, when it was just a losing battle, he kind of seemed a bit more chill about it.
I want to stay on the race for a second because
yeah, of course you can.
We haven't talked about yet, and I want to do a little segue from the race from the two Alpine drivers, Pierre and Esteban.
Okay.
Today, throughout the whole weekend, it was two different stories. Pierre said the car felt good. Has been fairly good all weekend, has been enjoying driving it. He's finished 9th today. In qualifying, Esteban couldn't give you enough explanations of why the car was so bad. It was the way it was turning, aerodynamics. Like, he really does not gel with that car anymore. Whether he's kind of lost motive in the team since he's leaving for Haas next year, but it's very rare to see them two drivers being so far apart.
Yeah, very rare.
I just want to bring up then the new team principal they're after adding in, and the new driver actually. In the same weekend, I think, a new team principal, Oliver Oakes from High Tech, is now team principal of Alpine.
Yeah, I believe one of the youngest team principals, bar Christian Horner, who was younger. However, Christian Horner had, am I right in saying that Oliver Oakes had more team principal experience coming into this?
He's been up in the junior formulas. Now, I do think it was a good idea for Alpine to bring in someone young, someone who's kind of, hungry, a bit of ambition into the team.
Yeah.
Like, they've gone through team principals so quickly. They even said in an interview to him, for his first interview, like, are you sure that you should be going into the revolving door? Because it seems to be as quick as they're coming in, they're coming straight out again.
It's very true. And
it'll be good for the CV. 6 months as Alpine team principal before he's gone again. It's great. It's does it really matter anymore who's head of that team? It's a mess, and yeah.
Is that your full opinion on it?
How has it gone so wrong? How has the Alpine situation gone so incredibly wrong?
Do we think the appointment of Flavio Briatore can bring them some advisory level, at least steer them in some kind of direction?
if we've been led to believe from rumours circulating that it's him that's come in and said ditch your engine division. Now, if he's coming back into a team and he's telling you to ditch your engine division and get a customer engine, that's how bad of a job you've done. It's awful. The Renault engine, it has been since the previous race. It's no. The cars are good enough. Operationally, they're obviously not good enough. There's no excuses anymore, I don't think, personally, my opinion, for not making gains. The McLaren, when those upgrades came and they improved the car and they brought them all the way to the front. Same thing with the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin, after 22, 5 podiums straight away. There isn't an excuse to not be making steps forward. It's operation not good enough and constantly churning out managers after 6 months or a year. I mean, basically a year, bang on, they got rid of another one. So you cannot keep blaming those people. Operationally, the entirety of the Alpine division is not good enough. So, yeah, they'll be out of the sport soon enough, though, anyway, won't they? It's not everything that we're led to believe. They're probably gearing up to sell.
Your opinion on the Alpine situation, and then we'll segue into the new driver that they've signed.
I do think, like, the people behind Enstone and even the engine unit, like, they're good people. They must care about the team. Everyone wants to do well when it comes to F1. Must be things going on in the top, or people not being looked at, or just being told something completely different. And I think I do like that they brought in Oliver Oakes. Maybe he can revitalise it, get to know the few people there. It has amazing backing from that Renault group if they do decide to go fully into it. Renault's company, you've seen them buy and sell F1 teams constantly. Like, it's either you go all in with F1 or you just don't bother at all. Whether they're gearing up to sell and they're going to get rid of the engine department, now they're very behind. So I do see that being a real possibility. It's just Renault is a strange brand for Formula One. That they won't just kind of give it everything and go
Should
ahead.
get you a T-shirt with that. Renault is a strange brand.
It's gone that well for them in F1 that they ditched the Renault name. That's how bad it went for them. They went to a different company's name underneath their control. That's how bad you've done the past few years. Just try and distance yourself from it. They've sold and bought the same team for how long? It's no longer a case of this or that. You can point the finger as many times as you like. At the end of the day, it's not good enough. And what must the 2026 engine look like as it stands for Flavio to have turned around, looked at that and gone, get a customer, get a Merc. Just think about how bad that engine must be right now to turn around and go, nah, you're all right, get a Merc one in. That's where we're at. Obviously, you guys will talk about the driver, and I'll let you go on with it. Otherwise, I'll keep ranting about this engine till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah. So, Jack doing to Alpine. What are our thoughts on it? I'll let you take this away, Paddy.
Yeah, his junior career, they are promoting their younger drivers, which is, I think it's the first time the Alpine brand or the Renault group has actually, other than Oscar Piastri, which that didn't go so well, kind of nuts and that, but they've got him. They've got him this time, unless you hear a little tweet go out there later on tonight without my consent.
Without my consent, I've been assigned to a team that I will not be driving for.
He seems very excited to be in F1. It's nice to have another rookie. Especially, like, it does look like we're getting Kimi Antonelli as well. And then you also have Oliver Behrman. A lot of Kiwis joining F1 now, which is nice to see. Like, between Australia and New Zealand, a lot of drivers coming from there lately. And you think, well, I haven't been to Australia, so I wouldn't know how big the racing scene is over there, but it is nice to see that a lot of Aussies and New Zealanders are on the grid, rather than it being nearly a full European grid as it has been for a very long time.
Yeah, very true. It's quite interesting to see that there's not many Germans on the grid as days evolve, though.
Nor Italians.
Nor Italians, yeah, very true. CJ, your thoughts on Jack Doohan joining Alpine for the 2025 season?
Poor guy. No, he's in the team. He's got the advantage of being able to get accustomed to the team. That's brilliant for him. Yeah, I mean, they had Joe on their books a few years ago, didn't they? And
yeah,
they obviously didn't take the option up on him. I think he finished third in the form. He's not done awfully as well, right? He's not been terrible this season. He's not been great, Joe. But if he can do it, I see no reason why Doohan can't come in and do a decent job. Yeah. Let's see. Especially against Gasly. He's got a benchmark, hasn't he? So we'll see.
As we're led to believe, though, just touching on Zhou Guanyu's pace, it could be the fact that the car is actually different to Bottas's car. I'm not sure whether it is still different, but apparently Bottas's car has got entirely different parts on it compared to Zhou Guanyu's. I think he did a 1:13 in qualifying, which resulted in him getting 17th on the grid after Logan Sargent, Alex Albon and Kevin Magnussen had their respective drops. He has been there or thereabouts with Bottas at times. I feel like we should just touch on them for a second. How do you think that team is going to evolve into Audi? Do you think Audi will pick up, hit the ground running, so to speak, in 2026? Or do we think that is a very much long-term plan that will probably only get going when we get into our 2030s?
We all thought it was going to be a decent start for them in 26. We all thought they're going to come in, decent engine, Audi,
yeah,
they can do that. Going to come in, make a good car, and then they took many missteps to the point where there were a lot of people not knowing if they were going to be in the sport at all, if they were going to pull out, if they were going to change their mind, then they put all the doubt to rest and kind of bought in. I think they brought their shares forward. They bought in sooner than they were meant to buy the full stake. Is that right? It's something like that. They bought in earlier than they were to prove that they were committed. But then obviously they were after Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz, his dad has got ties. The family have ties. Now, if Carlos Sainz looked at it and gone, I'd rather go to Williams for 2026 and 25 with that, then the Audi situation, especially with the certain individuals they had that I spoke about at McLaren before. Anyway, they were never going to be the solution. And they probably are going to be waiting until the 2030s, probably even 27, 28, I reckon, before they're actually competitive. And what does competitive mean nowadays? Does it mean podiums, mean wins, mean championships? Yeah, they're not. Whatever's going on there isn't good enough to be the front of the sport.
Yeah. Paddy, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think between the Sauber Audi situation, it's gone so poorly. With Sainz, you had a complete vote in no confidence. They really thought they were going to get Carlos Sainz for that, especially with the relationship with Carlos Sainz Sr. I think, was it a mechanic or someone who said, we can't even take off a wheel nut at the moment? You have Andrea Seidel, who's left the team, who was supposed to be the forefront of the team, left McLaren to go to Audi, and now he's gone. It seems to be, I think the rumours have been their engine has been very good. But so far, anything got to do with that Sauber outfit itself has just gone horribly wrong. So
this is the danger, isn't it, of taking on a team, like taking over a team as a prospect into Formula One. I mean, anyone that will pick up the Alpine team, for example, will have their hands full in terms of development tools, because obviously that car has, as CJ pointed out, gone nowhere after promise that it will be brought to the forefront. They were sitting at one point as the fifth team on the grid, and now they've obviously fallen back, but they promised each year that they were fifth team on the grid, that they will be the fourth or the third. So anyone that will take on that team is going to have an extremely hard time to bring that team into competitiveness of Formula One, because it's just a symptom of the tools that they'd have. You don't just go into Formula One, buy a team, and then just bring all your tools with you. You're kind of stuck with the facilities that are at base. And I think that may be what Andrea Seidel has seen, and then decided not to go with it in terms of Audi. Let's just take your thoughts, though, on the revolving door. And what do you think of Mattia Binotto being appointed at the top of the team? Is a step away from Ferrari to Audi.
No, I would say. Mattia, then again, he was over that Ferrari that came out in 2022. And at the start of that year, that was a title contending Ferrari. He does know what he's doing. This time, he isn't doing the roles of two people in the one job.
Yeah.
So it'll be very good to see. I think he's very competent. You'd have to be competent. Of course he would, being at the top of F1. Whether he can take hold of that team and put it in the right direction, I think so. It seems their engine seems to be good. They just really need to get a hang of that Sauber outfit and figure out what's going on. And we really won't find out until 2026 now, because even 2025, this is where all the change has been happening. I don't think they're going to come out gunswinging. I think they're going to be same position they were next year. Now, I could be very wrong with that. It really is waiting until 2026 to see how Audi come out. They've won multiple championships in any series they've done. They've hit the ball running, really, in more series.
Very true.
F1 is just a different task altogether.
Yeah.
And whether they've kind of figured that out now, and before they were reluctant on it, they could very quickly get back into the swing of things and come out there maybe for a fast car. Do I think they're going to be fighting for a championship straight away? No. It'd be nice to see them maybe if they're fourth. Whether they're going to do that, anything has to be better than last at the end of the day. So that's all I can say on it.
CJ?
Yeah, I agree. I just think they've obviously made some good signings. To be honest, I laughed at Binotto, but it's not because I don't think he can do the job. I just think with all the signings that you've made, and you've already changed your structure once, and it's been changed again so soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, again, it's maybe they've realised they need to step it up. They need to get moving with it. I do think that they do need a very strong driver partnership. Hulkenberg's getting older. It is what it is. If you can go into that for a few years and do well, get some good results, they also need another driver alongside him. And you'd think if it's Audi, you'd want a star driver there, and they haven't got one. So, not a star driver. Hulkenberg's never had a podium. And it's not like I don't like Hulkenberg. There isn't anyone at that team as it stands that has either, apart from is it Jonathan Wheatley, that has he has world championship capabilities. But Binotto, he did in his other roles at Ferrari, but as a leader, we've not seen that. And Hulkenberg has never had a podium. So they need someone in there. They need more than just what they've got right now, and it needs to happen immediately. Not, time flashes like that. You think right now, we were looking at 2022 just yesterday, just watching Leclerc crash at France talking, and now it's 2024. Same time, 2 years' time, we could be seeing Audi just whittling away. So we need to get a move on.
Who would you put in that second seat?
Yeah. Who would I put in that second seat?
Who would you put in that second seat? Just maybe not even realistic, because I feel like I know who you maybe might say.
That man there. But realistically speaking, you want someone with some sort of experience to come back in. Now, if you can convince Vettel to come back in to lead, tell them, look, we're not going to be competitive straight away. We are going to be competitive by the time. There's still time for you to fight for podiums. Tell them whatever he needs to hear. if you get him in for a project like that where he can hand it off and say, like, they can go, look what Schumacher did at Merck. Go on, have that. It's the same thing here. It's your hero.
What David Coulthard did at Red Bull.
Not same, is it? I mean, let's not ruin what we were saying. But yeah, if they got him in for that, either that or maybe even George Russell. You need someone that can challenge and lead a team.
Yeah,
Hulkenberg, I think he's more like he'll get you the points when you need him, kind of man. Not the podiums that they're going to be crying for as Audi.
And Paddy?
Problem for Audi is that they don't have to pick. They're not with the Sauber outfit. Why it's gone so bad? Like, it's really they're going to get who they can rather than they're going to pick the top talent, because it's really not looking good for them. I think it will be Valtteri Bottas left in that seat. I don't see anyone else. If they could bring back Vettel, it would be brilliant, but I don't see him coming back into the sport.
For me personally, I think they need someone that can develop the car. That can actually develop the car. I don't know who that would be out of the current selection that is available, but I'm not sure how Hulkenberg's skill is in terms of developing a car and pushing it in the right direction and giving a team an idea of how Formula One cars should behave. And I think that is what they need in the second seat.
Yeah. Difficult, isn't it? Very difficult. The fact we're talking about Bottas in that car for 26 is concerning, isn't it? You wouldn't have
10 race wins.
Great. It's not. He was a great driver for what he had to do at Mercedes. He was brilliant. Fortunately, when he's not challenging for those results, and we saw it, his head drops, and his head has dropped. And can he get that back on? It's difficult. So
yeah. Very difficult.
You
with a car that's so bad at the moment.
Yeah.
If you look at Sauber now, it is like the Williams when Russell and Kubica were driving it. It's gone that far off the pace.
Yeah, it's a different formula, isn't it?
It really is. So I do think they will keep with Bottas. Whether it's going to work out for them or not, I think Bottas is their only pick, to be quite honest. No one really else on the grid, or if they're going to pick outside of F1, maybe. But then again, who are they going to pick? That's the question. They don't have a lot of variety. Variety.
Yeah. Okay. We've clocked over an hour so far. So just to round out any subjects that we want to bring up, I'll start with CJ first and then move on to Paddy.
Any subjects? Now I've got to think of a subject.
You don't have to think of a subject.
If I go, I haven't got a subject to talk about.
You can say that we've covered everything that you wanted to speak about, and that's about it.
No. Got to think of something. Okay, actually, no. I've got something. So we're being told that there's a fight in both championships.
True.
So the rest of the year. Now, I think we can probably argue that it's definitely going one way. If it stays as it is, going one way for the constructors. Do we really think that Lando Norris can pull down that gap from what will be 65, 60, how many, I think is it 64 points? Can win basically every race with Verstappen second?
I've done the maths on it.
Tell me the maths.
From now, well, I don't have it out a day earlier after the race. From now until the end of the season, Norris would have to win the race with the fastest lap, and he would beat Verstappen by 2 points. Verstappen would have to come second every time, that is. Now, it's a fair shot for him to win this championship, but if McLaren start pulling off a 1-2 finish, and we know by the time the Red Bull gets to Singapore, it's so poor around Singapore. If Norris can win that and Verstappen down in fifth or something, the championship is quite on, to be honest. It's a fair shot, but it's not out of the realms of possibility.
It depends on if that performance that we saw today continues and the frivolous nature performance between the teams back and forth since Red Bull's pace has dropped off or since the teams have converged on them. As you say, it's a tough sell to say that the Drivers' Championship is still in question unless Norris can pull out some championship drive, which he hasn't been doing up until, you could say that today was a championship drive. I mean, it would be unfair not to say that. Bar the start, it was, kept his head down and drove off into the distance 20 seconds ahead.
Yeah, I agree. But I've never heard as many people from as many places in the media in Formula One from the paddock say that with a gap of 60-something points, 64, 65 points behind, with 9 races to go, I've never heard so many people say that the championship's on. Like, do we think that even if Norris was to win basically all of those races, do we not think he gets A, D, and F? Something goes wrong, a pit stop, a tyre failure, an engine failure, something will go, a collision, something will go wrong for Norris between now and the end of the season. To win 9 races in a row, we've seen it done recently. Is it likely? Probably not. It'll be interesting to see how they end the season. Can they carry it into 25? And if at that point they even want to win 25 and sacrifice 26 at the start of 26, probably not. I just think that the drivers, I think most people are on for a dead cert. McLaren are going to win the constructors now, and that's great. That's great for the sport. But do we really think? I don't see Norris winning this championship as he stands. If he got the results when he should have possibly got the results at the start, then yes. Unfortunately, it's too much of a mountain to climb, and I think it might be close as well. I think we'll start to see that it gets very close, and then we'll see the engine failure, or then we'll see a mistake happen where it becomes clear that it's not going to be the case with 2-3 races to go.
Just to go on your point there, you said that about Norris, but what's to say it won't happen to Verstappen? If Verstappen DNFs one race, it's really bringing everything. If Norris wins and Verstappen does a DNF, there'll be 50 points in the championship. It brings it very close. I think 45 actually. 45 points. Am I right there? 70. Yeah, 45.
We are entirely in hypotheticals though.
Yes, yeah.
100%. But I think it's a good argument.
Yeah, that's absolutely a good argument.
So. Is it likely? We really just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a good point, but even then, how many mistakes Red Bull have had their mistakes now? They've had Australia, they've had the pit stop at Austria, Verstappen's made his own errors. Do we really think that they're going to continue? They're not going to week them out? I mean, we've seen Red Bull being able to week those mistakes out. They rarely make them. I think McLaren have probably got... When you're hunting for something, because we've seen in other sports, you're hunting for something you haven't won in a long time, mistakes happen more often, whereas Red Bull have proven, and Verstappen's proven he can do it. He can get the results done when it matters. So I'd argue it's unlikely.
You've touched on that point there, where it's not just entirely on Norris's shoulders, it's also on McLaren's shoulders. Now you could argue that if McLaren were used to fighting for championships, then the result of Hungary would have been reversed. If they were used to fighting for drivers' championships and putting one driver over the other for the greater good of the drivers' championship. Now, they made it very clear that they're only after the constructors' championship at that point. Have things changed since then, and now they're reconsidering what they should have done? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if Norris loses this championship by that amount of 7 points, if he loses it by maybe it'd have to go maybe 6, since I don't see him getting more wins than Verstappen's got this season. Count back. If he loses it by 6 points, then you'd be, you wouldn't be happy. And I think that shows like there isn't time in F1. It's the right thing to do, but sometimes the right thing to do isn't the right thing for. It's the right thing morally. It's not the right thing for a championship. Like it's F1. It's the top of the sport. It's the top of motor racing. There isn't a time for niceties. Unfortunately, who's the best? The driver's got a chance of pushing you on to get the drivers' championship. Was it Lando or was it Piastri? It was Lando. So for me, you have to have given him and let him take that race,
especially at the halfway mark in the season.
Yeah. I mean, nothing's really changed either. I mean, Belgium, they didn't get a great result compared to what they could have done. And so now Hungary, now they might look at it and go, oh, wait, we shouldn't. But nothing's changed. There's been one race where you can say there's been a chance for them to have gained a lot of points on the stat. That's this race. There's one proper chance. So if they're going to start saying that it was only one race away from having a possibility, then you surely have to have gone, fine, let Lando win, and explain it away afterward. He had the pace to, so yeah. I think that will cost them. And if you're Lando at the end of the season looking at that, you'd be very annoyed.
Yeah. Paddy, your thoughts on what CJ said? Anything to add?
Not really. I don't think McLaren do need to figure out their strategies way more clear. They've lost a lot of races that should have got this season. You can nearly count 3, like.
Yeah.
Belgium won as well, like.
And Silverstone.
I think this is going to be very good for Norris after this race. I think I heard someone say he out for Verstappen today in his home race. To win against Max Verstappen 22 seconds, that has to do something. At
his home race as well.
Yeah, like maybe he'll come out now and he'll be a different driver. He's very, very kind of odd demeanour, Norris.
In terms of?
He's very, very hard on himself. Even after that race, it's like, lad, you're after winning by 22 seconds and you're still kind of looking at it like you didn't do it right. Now, I know he messed up the start and everything, whether that's the McLaren's problem, as we mentioned earlier, or if it's the driver issue. Still a very good race. You should be more kind of proud on yourself than that. He needs a kind of hunter's mentality, I think. If he had that, would he be further in the championship? I do think. Like, you look at Verstappen, you look at Hamilton, all the greats. They're vicious when it comes to fighting. Norris is kind of, I don't know, would you say morally?
In my opinion, I think he's very concerned with outside perceptions.
Yes, yeah. I would say.
He's the most popular driver in the sport at the minute, isn't he? Probably doesn't want to lose that. Yeah. I mean, if you look at Verstappen, when he goes at Brazil, he already had the championship won. He didn't let Perez through when they told him to. And that's for, what, 5th at the time, to try and get Perez second in the championship. You've got to be, sometimes you've got to be brutal. Would McLaren have punished Lando Norris for that? Really? Publicly, maybe so. Yeah, we can't have that. We can't have that. Behind closed doors, they're not going to do anything. They're just not. Who's going to win you the championship? It's not Piastri. Piastri's a great driver. And he needs a bit more time to. The qualifying's there. He's proven on times he can manage the tyres, he can get there, but sometimes the overall pace doesn't all come together. But yeah, Lando needs to be more cutthroat with what he does and put his foot down.
Yeah. Is it Piastri's earned his spot in Formula One, I'd say.
100%.
100%. I think he just needs time to adapt to it. And also probably needs to be tested more rather than be protected. Needs to be tested by those situations where his teammate is marginally ahead or outpacing him and had a preferential strategy, or the team hasn't been fair to him and needs to be put through these situations where sometimes that is just Formula One rather than being protected. But yeah, that's about as much as I've got to add on it. Is there anything else we want to cover?
I think I've covered everything on my part anyways.
Okay then. Right. So hopefully by the time that everyone sees this, it will be live before at least Tuesday. So appreciate everyone for watching. Next week we'll obviously be covering Monza. Thank you very much. And we'll be back again next week. Bye-bye for now.